Hi, I'm Greg Euland with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. Today's episode I've been looking forward to for quite a while. It's a pretty wide-ranging conversation about where we are as an industry and where we're going. I had the opportunity to sit down with Cliff Banks, founder of the Banks Report, and really enjoyed the talk, and I hope you do too. Let's get connected. Cliff Banks, founder of the Banks Report, one of the preeminent industry publications around M&A and a lot of that activity. So thanks so much for chatting a little bit.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. So Cliff, you probably are in the know as much or more than anybody else in the industry. So just wanted to get your take on a few kind of hotter topics, I guess,
right.
And things that have been around for a while but are not going away anytime soon. So the first one is really around inventory issues, chip shortage, supply chain. At a high level, what's your perception of that? Is it going away anytime soon? Where are we at?
It's not just a chip shortage anymore. It's also a raw material shortage. And it's not just vehicles, it's across the board,
right.
That impacts society as a whole. Going in a little bit different direction too, just on the inventory, as the gas prices continue to explode, are we going to start seeing customers wanting to turn in their trucks or SUVs? I'm starting to hear some anecdotal evidence that that's the case already. So what's that going to do to vehicle prices today on the used vehicle? Certainly I think one of the biggest concerns a dealer has today, and certainly one that sells a lot of used vehicles, is how to time that market. When is that pricing going to start declining? And you don't want to be sitting on an inventory full of used vehicles when the market goes south. So I think that is an immediate concern.
So let's dig into that a little bit, right? So the used vehicle pricing and inventory levels and things like that. We've been talking about that since about April of 2020, where when this falls off, it's going to be bad, right?
Yes.
And because we started seeing this climb April, May, and it's like, well, yeah, but it's a bubble and it's going to pop. Well, it hasn't popped, right? So do you think it's going to be a pop, or do you think it's going to be a gradual decline where it's a little more controlled, or do you think it's not really going to go back to what it was?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I mean, and that's the problem. I don't think anyone really
You're right.
has a good answer there, because we don't know what's going to happen next week or tomorrow. I think we're in a world right now that is uncertain, not just from an automotive manufacturing perspective, but also just from a world perspective. The reality is, any day you could wake up and not have access from an internet perspective.
Yeah.
Cyber warfare is a very real thing that's going on, and dealers need to be nimble and need to be able to pivot quickly. You have to pay attention to what's going on both in their local market.
Yeah.
Certainly, because I think there's a lot of things that we may be talking about nationally or internationally that maybe aren't impacting the local market, but then again, there are some local markets that are going to be on the leading edge, right?
Sure.
And then just, paying attention to what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Having the mechanisms and processes in place our plans in place to offload that inventory fast if you have to. Yeah. Listen, I'll tell you, when, it was interesting watching the inventory levels of a Carvana, CarMax, and some of these others. When we first started entering the pandemic, they unloaded vehicles very quickly before anyone else really knew what was going on. So they were on top of it. And now they had to go back and get that inventory at a much higher price. So maybe they don't work in their favor. But again, it's to the point of the uncertainty that I talk about often right now. You have the uncertainty long-term of manufacturer strategies with potential strategies of direct-to-consumer, what the EV, how the EV is going to impact the retail network, and the connected vehicle, which I think is going to have a huge impact over time. But right now, that's amplified 1,000 times because of the uncertainty of what's going on in the world and its day-to-day uncertainty.
You're right. So let's go there with
sure.
EVs, right? Okay. So electric vehicles, it's all you see in any advertisement, right? And dealers are prepping up, and they need to, right? It's coming. Yes. But at the end of the day, when you look at the grand scheme of things, how many new vehicles being sold are electric vehicles? And maybe more importantly, what percentage of used vehicles being sold are electric vehicles? What impact is this going to have? Where are we going? Where are we at today? How far out are we till this is a real thing?
We're still in the world of hype.
Yep.
And much of what we see talked about from the manufacturers is really designed to drive up investor interest and create that message that, hey, yeah, okay, there's Tesla, there's Lucid, there's Rivian, but we're in the same game, right? The manufacturing capacity yet on EVs with Ford, GM, and others still isn't there. I mean, look, Jim Farley announced this week, or just last night, in fact, at a conference that I think they have capacity for 200,000 Lightnings. They have reservations for 200,000, and that's all they're building till I think 2025. So it may sound like next year, next month, the whole world's going to be EV. It's not. It's still a gradual process. And then certainly with some of the world issues going on, impacting manufacturing, the battery strategies, the batteries still, that's a huge deal. Yeah. That's why you're seeing manufacturers building battery factories here in the U.S. all over. So, and again, the other part to that is, are their strategies going to play out?
Yeah.
We don't know. But again, to your point, which you mentioned, the dealers are being asked to invest hundreds of thousands, if not more, dollars into their facilities to prepare for this EV tsunami.
Yeah.
That's coming.
So allegedly. is there an opportunity though? So they're going to invest this money,
yes,
right? And they're going to have to in a lot of ways. They've had to do things like that all the time. But is there a good way for them to capitalize and shorten the return on investment on some of these things, especially with certain manufacturers, maybe where they are going to allocate EVs to dealers? Are there ways for them to take advantage of this as an opportunity rather than, just spend all the money and wait for the cars to come?
Yes, I think certainly being able to understand it's not just an EV question today. It's also a question of overall inventory, how you're engaging with the customer. And is there an opportunity for dealers to change their model of engagement with the customer? You order a vehicle a year, you're not going to get it for a year, and you don't hear boo from the manufacturer or the dealership. Can the dealer communicate and keep the customer updated in a way that the customer is not having to call and find out? I think the dealers that can show that they have processes like that in place are going to be ones that win in the market. Is this still it's still a world in which the dealers that are smart, have the right processes, are the ones that are going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, we see that. I mean, and we're seeing that today still, even in this world. I mean, the dealers that can figure out a way to get the inventory, and there are dealers that have done that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, having the plan in place, but the manufacturer is going to have a much greater role in dictating what that retail process looks like. So understanding where the manufacturer is going and being able to set up your dealership, finding the vendors, finding the solutions that will help you meet or accomplish what the manufacturer is dictating, you're going to be in a much better position as a dealer to get the inventory and to be one of the chosen few. Because I think at some level, the manufacturers are going to have to determine and choose which dealers are going to get which inventory.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you talked about the Ford Lightning, right? How many F-150s are sold each year?
Yeah.
900,000 million, something like that. Yeah. And so you're talking about 200,000 cars over the next 3 years. You don't need the same dealer body to sell those vehicles.
Right.
You just don't.
Right. So allocation is going to be, tough. And I think that's across the board with any of the manufacturers and some of the EVs coming out. There's going to be a limited number to sell.
Yep.
Going forward for the next few years at least. So part of it's driven by the fact that you need to have profitability in these sales.
Yeah.
So, I think the ICE engines, the ICE driven vehicles are still very profitable.
Right.
By the end of the decade, maybe the EV will supplant that, but it's still going to take a while.
Yeah. When you see, certain OEMs really taking it's the work that Tesla's done over the last 5 or 6 years with the legislations in different states across the country and leveraging that to find ways to go either actually direct to consumer or in a hybrid direct to consumer model. Right. So when you see that, what impact do you think that has a little longer term on the dealership franchise model? Is there a concern there?
Yeah.
And how do you mitigate it?
Yeah, certainly there's a concern. I don't know that we're going to have much clarity on how realistic that is until we see how successful Rivian and Lucid and some of these other direct-to-consumer plays are doing. Certainly Tesla's been successful to this point, but are they getting to a point where there's the number of sales, their sales volume is negatively going to impact their retail process at Tesla? It's possible. It takes a lot of money and investment to manage that customer relationship. So if a couple of these EV direct-to-consumer models are successful over the next 2-3 years, then I think that puts the franchise model at greater risk. If they're not successful, then I think that's going to be I think that'll be beneficial to the franchise model.
So we're rooting against Rivian. Got it.
I hate to say it. I mean, you don't want to root, but
I'm saying it.
Yeah, but I think there's certainly things we can learn.
Yeah,
learn from companies like that. But I always maintain there may be things that they may need to learn a lot more. A lot more from dealers. Great. You guys have heard me talk a lot about uncertainty.
Yeah,
and to me that's part of the uncertainty over the next few years is how that model evolves. And I don't know that what the manufacturers are thinking today is going to be what they're thinking next year.
That's true. Very
troubling comments from Farley this week with Ford. I think Stellantis also, in terms of what the model looks like and the value at which, or the number which they seem to have pegged the franchise model costs per vehicle. It's around $2,000. They certainly are looking to reshape how they distribute and market vehicles. So I would think tier 2 advertising could be one of the victims here. Whether they present it as direct to consumer or we're going to tell the dealers how to sell the cars or how to distribute the cars. And it's going to be an online platform. It's going to be online, one price only, period. We're going to dictate the price. Again, I think we may see different manufacturers approach that differently.
Okay.
But again, the dealers are going to have, and the NADA and the state associations are going to have a lot to say about what these new franchise contracts are going to look like.
Yeah. No, as they should.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So thinking about that kind of franchise model, is there an impact that the tech in cars is going to have on that relationship between the OEM, the consumer, and the dealership? So you think about how many pieces of the car are connected at this point. What impact does that have on that kind of triangle of the relationship?
Well, I do think the connected vehicle, and as we quickly get into that era, and it's going to be connected more than EV. I mean,
sure.
So every vehicle coming off the line is going to be connected. And essentially able to, every part at some point on that vehicle is going to have a sensor that's transmitting data to a cloud-based platform, ostensibly created by manufacturer.
Yep.
They're going to have all that service-related data. Now, if you buy a vehicle from a manufacturer, you're going to have probably download an app from that manufacturer.
I love it.
Yeah, you love it. Well, guess what? That data is going to the manufacturer, not necessarily to the dealer. So my point is, the manufacturers are going to have much greater access to the customer than they've ever had before. So they're going to dictate the messaging. They're going to dictate, how that process looks.
Yeah.
And may impact service department activity also. And again, different manufacturers are going to approach it differently, and different manufacturers are going to have different levels of execution. Again, this world demands manufacturer execution with this data, and that's not always a given, as we've seen so many times in the past. So, but again, no, I think it's at the very least they're going to have access to the customer.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because once that information, you can start doing things with it, and whether you do or not is your point, right? As far as what happens in the future. But when you have the information, when you have the data, there's a lot of really cool stuff that can happen. So,
and the fact is, we have the technology today. I mean, to do that. Now, our industry is fragmented.
Yep.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but the industry is moving there. So, we're getting there. This thing's happening quickly, but it's not happening quickly. There's a lot of talk about it, but again, just for example, let's take GM and their EV plans, right?
Yep.
If you listen to Mary Barra talk about the EVs and listen to their investor presentations and whatnot, you would think that they are one of the leaders in electric vehicle manufacturing. Well, LA Auto Show, there wasn't one EV on the show floor in November. I think they sold 26 total EVs in the fourth quarter. Now, that's not to say that they aren't laying the pieces and laying the groundwork, which they clearly are.
Yep.
But still, that it's not going to happen overnight.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. Well, Cliff, I could talk to you for hours. I really could. I love having conversations with you. But want to be respectful of your time, obviously. Yeah. So, anything we haven't touched on that you want to chat about? Any other rabbit holes you want to go down?
No. Well, no. I just think it's good to be back at NADA, and certainly seeing the energy. We are in such an uncertain period of time. We have an opportunity to really kind of shape what the future of the automotive industry looks like.
Yeah.
And that's the people that are here. And that's what I think everyone's focused on. So
absolutely.
It's an exciting time.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to chat. Always appreciate the insight.
Thank you.
Cliff Banks, have a great NADA. Thanks, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to episodes of Connected on Apple, YouTube, or Spotify podcasts, and make sure to subscribe so you're notified every other Wednesday when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.